Hi, in this tutorial we're going to be talking about powers of 10, mainly the patterns that are used and what to do when you multiply or divide powers of 10 or whole numbers by a power of 10. So for the students, we first want to have them look at a chart, explore the patterns that are happening with a power of 10. So the base is 10 in every single question. Your base is your big number. So if I'm looking at the first example, my base would be 10. And the exponent is 1. All right, that tells my exponent tells me how many times I have to multiply my base. So in this case, the expanded form would be 1 times 10, because there's only one 10 that should be written down. That's what the exponent said. And the standard form is the expanded form solved. So if I did 1 times 10, I would get 10. The next example would be 10 to the power of 2. That tells me I have to have 2 10s written down. So I'm going to have 1 times 10 times 10, because I want to have 2 10s written down. That's what the exponent's telling me. And 1 times 10 times 10 is 100. And we continue that pattern. My base is 10. Tell me to multiply it by itself 3 times. So 1 times 10 times 10 times 10. I need 3 10s in this case. 1 times 10 times 10 times 10 is going to give me 1,000. The next one, I need 4 10s. 1 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. If I multiply all those together, I'm going to get 10,000. 5 10s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I have 1 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, then I'm going to get 100,000. And we'll get into 10 to the power of 6. The base is 10, the exponent 6. So I'm going to try and write small, but I'm going to need 6 10s. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. That's the expanded form. And the standard form is 1 million. And the very last one is important, because it's 10 to the 0. That tells us we want 0 10s. All right? It doesn't mean we want a 0, but we just don't want any 10s. So the expanded form is just 1. Normally you would write 1 times however many 10s. Because it's a 0, it's telling us don't write any 10s there. So the expanded form is just 1. And the standard form is also 1. So after the students complete this, we want to start looking at what patterns are happening. And it's easy to see that the exponent is very important, because the exponent tells us how many 10s we have to write, but it also tells us how many zeros have to be in our standard form. So we could work both ways, understanding that if I have 5 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that means my exponent has to be a 5. And also if I had 5 10s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that still means my exponent needs to be a 5. So we're using those skills of patterns to figure out what my exponent form, expanded form, and standard form could be when I'm solving problems. So when we practice this, we just give them the chart of exponent form, expanded form, and standard form, and have them practice filling it in. If I know there's a 10 to a 4, I know that's going to be 4 10s, and there has to be 4 zeros in my answer. So it's 1 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 is an expanded form, and the standard form answer is 10,000. Right. We could also just give them the expanded form. So in the expanded form, we see 1, 2, 3 10s. So that tells me my exponent is a 3. And that also tells me in the standard form I have to have 3 zeros. So my answer is going to be 1,000. And we could also just give the standard form. In the standard form, you're looking for how many zeros you see. In this case, there are no zeros. So that tells you your exponent is 0. So that's 10 to the 0. And the expanded form tells you how many zeros you have. And again, normally we would write 1 times however many bases we need, but it's already telling us we don't need any bases. So the expanded form is just 1. And last example, we have our standard form given to us again. We can count how many zeros there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That tells me right away that my exponent is 6 and my base is 10. So to expand it, we need 6 tens to show the expanded form. So this is the basic getting into power of tens, understanding what the exponent form is, what the expanded form is, and what the standard form is. Once we start getting the hang of that, we start getting into multiplication and division. So it helps to understand what 10 to the third power is, because we get a problem like 61 times 10 to the third. Now I know that 10 to the third is really 10 times 10 times 10, or I could write that as 1,000. So what the problem's really having us do is 61 times 10 times 10 times 10, or we could write it as 61 times 1,000, or we could write it like they have as 61 times 10 to the third. Either way, we can solve each one by understanding how many zeros we need. So in this case, there's 1, 2, 3 tens with 3 zeros. So that means there has to be 3 zeros in my answer. If I took 61 and I just multiplied it by whatever's left over, just the 1 is left over in each case. So really it's just 61 times 1, we get 61. So it's 61,000. Same case underneath 61 times 1,000, there's 3 zeros. I need to have those 3 zeros. Whatever's left over, we can multiply. So 61 times 1 is just 61. We get 61,000. And in the case of an exponent, it's important to look at the exponent that's given, because it's base 10. That tells us we just need 3 zeros and bring our 61 up front. So in each case, we should get the same exact answer, because 10 times 10 times 10 is the same thing as 1,000, which is the same thing as 10 to the third power. I could also ask a question in reverse where we're trying to find out what the standard form is or the expanded form is. In this case, they have 85 times some number is going to give us 8,500. I just look at the zeros at the end. It tells me I have 2 zeros. So I can either look for 10 squared or 10 to the power of 2. I could look for 100, or I can look for 10 times 10. In this case, they gave us the answer as 100. So that's the answer I'm going to use. And I could figure that out because what was missing was those 2 zeros. I had 85 in the original part as one of my factors. If I multiply it by 100, it's going to give me my product of 8,500. If you want to go ahead and pause it right now, take the time to practice this. I'll come back, or when you unpause it, I will have the answers for you. All right, so the answer is 36 times 10 squared. We should have 36, and this tells us we need to add 2 zeros on there, so it turns into 3,600. And the next question, I have 10 to the power of 3. This tells me I need 3 zeros in my answer, and then bring over my 707, so it's 707,000. I'm just going to keep going fairly quick. On the bottom, we're paying attention to how many zeros there are in the answer. There's only 1. So I could write this as 10 to the 1. I could also write my answer as 10. Or I could write my answer as 1 times 10. So any of those would be an acceptable answer. And the next one, I don't have any zeros. So that tells me my exponent is 0. So you can write your answer as 10 to the 0. I could write my answer as 1 as well. And in the last problem, there are 2 zeros. So I could write it as 10 to the power of 2, or 10 squared. I could also write my answer as 100. Or I can write my answer as 10 times 10. Any of those answers are correct. Moving on to division. In multiplication, we're pretty much adding zeros to our answer. So when we divide, we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to take zeros away. If that makes sense. Because I have 4,000 divided by 10 squared. I have to understand that 10 squared is the same thing as 10 times 10. Or I can write it as 100. So the question's really asking me, what is 4,000 divided by 10 squared? Or what is 4,000 divided by 10 times 10? Or what is 4,000 divided by 100? In this case, the exponents or the number of zeros are very important. So the exponent's 2. That tells me because I'm dividing, I'm going to take away 2 zeros, and whatever's left is going to be my answer. Same thing when I'm multiplying 10 times 10. There's 2 10s there. That tells me to take away 2 zeros, and my answer is going to be 40. In the case where it shows 400 divided by 100, I'm paying attention, there's 2 zeros there. So I'm going to take 2 zeros off the other side, and I still get my answer of 40. Like I said before, they're all the same answer because we're pretty much solving the same exact problem. 10 squared is the same thing as 10 times 10, which is the same thing as 100. So I'm dividing the number 4,000 by the same number, just shown in different forms. In this case, it's just a little bit of practice, same exact thing. I have 540 divided by 10 to the power of 1. The power of 1 is very important because I'm dividing. I'm going to be taking away zeros. This tells me just take away 1 0. So 540 turns into 54. When I'm doing 98,000 divided by 10 squared, I'm looking at the exponent, that's 2. It tells me to take away 2 zeros. So I'm going to take away those 2 zeros. What's left is 980. The very bottom, number 3, 351 million. I have an exponent of 4. So because I'm dividing, it tells me take away 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. And whatever's left over is going to be my answer. So I have a 3, a 5, a 1, and then 2 zeros. So it turns into 35,100. Here's some more independent practice. Feel free to pause it right now if you want to try it on your own, and click play when you're ready to resume. So the first problem, paying attention to my exponent, I'm dividing by 10 squared. That means I'm going to take away 2 zeros. So 36,000 divided by 10 squared is going to be 360. And the next problem, I have 5,707,000 divided by 3. So dividing means I'm going to take away. It tells me to take away 3 zeros. So 1, 2, 3 zeros are taken away. I'm left with 5,707. Problem number 3, I have an exponent of 5. It tells me to take away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. And the only thing that's left is 50. So 5 million divided by 10 to the 5th power is going to give you 50. And on the bottom, again, we're looking for the exponent form or expanded form or standard form of a number that we could divide to make this equation true. So I have 3,894 divided by some number is going to give me 3,894. It's the same situation. You're looking for how many zeros were either at, or how many zeros were taken away from the original number. So in this case, both of the numbers were the same. So no zeros were taken away. So I'm going to have 10 to the 0. I could also have 10 to the 0, and standard or expanded form, which is just 1. So either answer is acceptable. For problem number 5, I had 2 zeros, and those 2 zeros were taken away. So that would be 10 squared. I could also write that as 100, or I can write it as 10 times 10. All 3 answers would be acceptable. And in the last problem, I only have 2 zeros left. So they got rid of all of these zeros. That would be 4 zeros there. So I would have 10 to the power of 4. I could also write the answer as 1,000. Or I could write the answer as 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. Any of those 3 answers would be acceptable. So it's a really quick breakdown of exponents, base 10 with base 10, how to multiply and divide them using whole numbers. We will get into how to multiply and divide by power of 10, talking about decimals. So that will be a little bit different. You will have to understand more place value than just adding and subtracting zeros. But that'll be on the next video. So thank you very much for watching this, and hopefully it helped out.